died for 17 minutes in a Jerusalem hospital, and what Jesus showed me during those 17 minutes will shake you to your core. My name is Rachel Goldstein, and I am a Jewish woman married to one of Israel's most prominent religious leaders. What I'm about to share with you goes against everything I was raised to believe, everything my husband teaches, everything my community holds sacred, but I cannot remain silent about what I witnessed. Beyond the veil of death, Jesus Christ himself appeared to me and revealed 3 unmistakable signs that will precede the rapture. And according to what he showed me, we have until the end of September. Before we begin, I need you to type Amen in the comments right now if you're ready to hear this testimony, because what I'm about to tell you will challenge everything you think you know about the end times. Let me start from the beginning. My life before that day was structured, predictable, and deeply rooted in Jewish tradition. I am the wife of Imam David Goldstein, a man whose voice carries weight throughout Jerusalem's religious circles. Our home was a place where scholars gathered, where ancient texts were studied, where the wisdom of generations was preserved and passed down. I lived comfortably in this world of ritual and routine, never questioning the boundaries of my faith, never imagining that everything I believed could be turned upside down in a single moment. That morning started like any other. I was preparing breakfast in our kitchen, the same kitchen where I had prepared thousands of meals for my family and countless guests who visited our home seeking spiritual guidance from my husband. The smell of fresh bread filled the air, and I remember thinking how blessed we were to live such a peaceful life in the heart of the holy city. My husband had already left for morning prayers at the synagogue, and I was alone with my thoughts, planning the day ahead. It was then that the pain struck, sharp, sudden, like lightning tearing through my chest. I gasped, clutching at my heart, trying to understand what was happening to me. The kitchen began to spin, the familiar walls blurring into streaks of color. I reached for the counter, but my legs gave way beneath me. The last thing I remember before everything went black was the sound of my favorite teacup shattering against the tile floor, the pieces scattering like my consciousness was about to scatter. When the paramedics found me, I was already gone. My heart had stopped, my breathing had ceased, and for 17 minutes, by every medical definition, Rachel Goldstein was dead. But where my body lay motionless on that cold hospital gurney, my spirit was about to embark on a journey that would forever change not just my life, but my understanding of eternity itself. The darkness that followed wasn't frightening. It was peaceful, like being wrapped in the softest blanket imaginable. There was no pain, no worry, no earthly concern, just a gentle floating sensation, as if I was being carried by invisible hands towards something magnificent. Time seemed to have no meaning in this place. I couldn't tell if seconds or hours were passing, but gradually I became aware of a light in the distance. This wasn't the harsh fluorescent light of the hospital, or the warm glow of the candles we lit every Sabbath. This was something entirely different, something alive and pulsing with love so pure, it took my breath away, though I realized I wasn't breathing at all. The light grew brighter as I moved toward it, not painful to look at, but overwhelming in its beauty and power. I felt drawn to it like a moth to a flame, but instead of fear, I felt only anticipation. As I drew closer, the light began to take shape, and my heart, if I still had one, began to race with recognition and disbelief. Standing before me in robes of brilliant white was a figure I had been taught my entire life to reject, a figure whose very name was forbidden in our household. Yet here he was, his arms outstretched, his face radiating a love so complete that every wall I had built around my heart crumbled in an instant. Jesus Christ stood before me, and in that moment, every argument my husband had ever made, every scripture he had quoted to prove this man was not the Messiah, every tradition that had shaped my understanding of God, fell away like autumn leaves. I knew, with a certainty that transcended logic or theology, that I was standing in the presence of the Son of the living God. His voice, when he spoke, was like music and thunder combined, gentle yet powerful, familiar yet otherworldly. "Rachel," he said, and the way he spoke my name made me understand that he had known me before I was born, that every tear I had ever shed, every prayer I had ever whispered, every doubt I had ever harbored was known to him completely. "Do not be afraid," he continued, though I realized I felt no fear, only awe. "You have been brought here not by accident but by design. What you are about to see, you must remember. What you are about to learn, you must share. The time is shorter than most believe, and my people must be warned." The space around us began to shift and change, and suddenly we were no longer in that place of pure light, but standing above the earth itself. I could see the curve of the planet below us, the blue and green marble that had been my home for 43 years. But something was different about it. There was a heaviness, a darkness that seemed to cling to certain areas like a spiritual fog. "You look closely," Jesus said, his hand pointing towards specific regions of the earth. "See how the darkness gathers. See how the light grows dim in places where it once shone brightly. This is the condition of the world as my return approaches. But before I come for my bride, before the rapture that my people have been promised, there will be 3 signs that cannot be mistaken." My spirit trembled as he spoke these words, understanding that I was about to receive knowledge that had been hidden from the world, knowledge that would burden me with responsibility I never asked for. But I also knew that this was why I had died, why I had been brought to this place between worlds. I was to be a messenger, a herald of what was coming. "The first sign," Jesus began, his voice taking on a tone of deep seriousness, "will be seen in the heavens themselves. Watch for the moon to turn the color of blood, not during an eclipse, but on a night when it should shine silver. This will happen when the world least expects it, when people are going about their daily lives, convinced that tomorrow will be just like today. The blood moon will rise, and it will remain that way for 3 nights. Scientists will scramble for explanations, but they will find none that satisfy. This is my warning to the world that time is running short." I watched in amazement as he showed me this vision. The moon, hanging in a star-filled sky, slowly transforming from its familiar pale glow to a deep crimson that seemed to pulse with life. Below, I could see people pointing at the sky, their faces filled with wonder and growing fear as they realized they were witnessing something beyond natural explanation. "The second sign," Jesus continued, "will manifest in the hearts of my people. Those who truly belong to me will begin to experience dreams and visions unlike anything they have known before. Children will prophesy, elderly will see visions, and those who have never spoken of spiritual things will find themselves compelled to share what I reveal to them. This awakening will spread like wildfire across the earth, and no denomination, no religious boundary will contain it. My spirit will be poured out in the final harvest before I come." Again, the vision unfolded before my eyes. I saw people of all ages, all backgrounds, all nationalities, suddenly receiving divine revelations. I watched as children drew pictures of angels they had never been taught about, as grandmothers woke from dreams filled with prophetic imagery, as skeptics and atheists found themselves inexplicably drawn to seek God. It was beautiful and terrifying at the same time, a spiritual awakening on a scale the world had never seen. "And the third sign," Jesus said, his voice now carrying a weight that seemed to press upon my spirit, "will be the great deception that precedes my coming. A figure will arise who will seem to have answers for all the world's problems. He will perform signs and wonders that will amaze even those who consider themselves wise. Nations will bow before him, religions will unite under his banner, and for a brief time it will seem as though peace has finally come to earth. But this peace will be a lie, and this unity will be built upon the foundation of rejecting me." The vision that accompanied these words was the most disturbing of all. I saw a man whose face seemed to shift and change, sometimes appearing kind and wise, other times revealing a darkness that made my spirit recoil in horror. I watched as crowds gathered to hear him speak, as world leaders shook his hand, as religious figures of every faith proclaimed him to be the answer humanity had been seeking. The deception was so complete, so convincing, that I understood how even the elect might be deceived, if it were possible. But Rachel, Jesus said, turning his gaze directly upon me, his eyes holding depths I had never imagined possible. You must understand the timeline. These 3 signs will unfold rapidly, one after another, like dominoes falling in divine order. The blood moon will appear first, and from that moment you must count carefully. 40 days after the blood moon fades back to silver, the spiritual awakening will begin. And 30 days after that awakening reaches its peak, the great deceiver will step onto the world stage. Yet my spirit felt heavy with the weight of these revelations. I tried to calculate in my mind to understand what this meant for the world, for my family, for everyone I loved. But Lord, I whispered, my voice barely audible even to myself, when will this begin? When should people start watching for these signs? His expression grew even more serious, and I felt a chill that had nothing to do with temperature. The blood moon rises in the month you call August. By the time the autumn feasts arrive, by the time the trumpet sounds on Rosh Hashanah, my bride will be taken home. September, Rachel, the end of September. That is when I will call my people up to be with me. The words hit me like physical blows. September. We were already in June when I had died. That meant the world had perhaps 3 months before everything changed forever. 3 months before the rapture that Christians had been anticipating for nearly 2,000 years would finally occur. The urgency of what Jesus was telling me became crystal clear. You see why you had to die today, he continued, his voice gentle but firm. You see why you had to be brought here, to witness these things, to receive this message. Your husband is a learned man, respected in his community, but he teaches from traditions that have blinded him to the truth. Your people, my chosen people, have missed their Messiah once. They must not miss the signs of my return. Tears began to flow down my face, though I wasn't sure how that was possible in this spiritual realm. But who will believe me? I'm just a woman, just a wife. My husband will think I've lost my mind. My community will reject me. How can I possibly convince anyone of what I've seen here? Jesus stepped closer to me, and I felt his presence like warm sunlight after a cold night. Do not worry about who will believe you, Rachel. That is not your responsibility. Your responsibility is simply to speak what you have seen and heard. Some will listen, some will turn away, but those who are meant to hear will recognize the truth in your words, and you will not be alone. Others around the world are receiving similar revelations. The Spirit is moving, preparing hearts for what is to come. He gestured toward the earth again, and suddenly I could see into the homes and hearts of people across the globe. In a small apartment in New York, a young mother was waking from a dream about trumpets sounding in the sky. In a village in Kenya, an elderly pastor was sketching images that had come to him in a vision of people rising into clouds. In China, in secret house churches, believers were reporting dreams of a great wedding feast. The confirmation was everywhere, spreading like ripples across the surface of a vast pond. The enemy knows his time is short, Jesus explained, his voice taking on a tone of both sadness and determination. He will try to discredit these messages, to make people think they are products of fear or imagination. He will use respected voices to mock and dismiss what my servants are revealing, but truth has a power that no lie can overcome. Those who seek me with sincere hearts will recognize my voice. The scene around us began to shift again, and suddenly I was seeing into the near future, watching as the signs Jesus had described began to unfold. I saw the blood moon rising over Jerusalem, its eerie crimson glow casting shadows that seemed to dance with otherworldly life. News anchors struggled to explain the phenomenon. Scientists offered theories that fell apart under scrutiny, and religious leaders across all faiths found themselves grappling with questions they couldn't answer. 40 days later, just as Jesus had promised, the spiritual awakening began. It started quietly, with individuals here and there reporting unusual dreams and visions. But within weeks, it had become impossible to ignore. Social media platforms were flooded with testimonies of divine encounters. Churches that had been half empty for years suddenly found themselves packed with people desperate to understand what was happening to them. Even secular news outlets were forced to cover what could only be described as a global spiritual phenomenon. And then, exactly 30 days after the awakening reached its crescendo, he appeared. The great deceiver, just as Jesus had warned. He emerged from the political sphere, a charismatic leader who seemed to have solutions for every crisis facing humanity. Wars that had raged for decades suddenly ceased at his word. Economic problems that had seemed insurmountable were resolved through his innovative policies. Religious conflicts that had torn communities apart for centuries were mediated to peaceful resolutions under his guidance. I watched in horror as the vision showed me how quickly the world embraced this false Messiah. He spoke with such eloquence, performed such convincing miracles, and offered such appealing promises that even those who should have known better began to follow him. Religious leaders from Christianity, Judaism, Islam, Buddhism, and every other faith found common ground under his banner. For the first time in human history, it seemed that true world peace was possible. But Jesus let me see beyond the facade. I saw the darkness that lurked behind the deceiver's charming smile, the hatred for God that burned in his heart like an unholy fire. I saw how his miracles were powered not by divine authority, but by demonic forces that masqueraded as angels of light. I saw how his peace was built not on love and justice, but on the suppression of truth and the silencing of those who dared to question his methods. This is why the timing is so crucial, Jesus explained as the vision faded. I will not leave my bride to face what comes after. The deception will be so complete, so convincing, that even my elect would be led astray if it were possible. But before the true darkness falls, before the tribulation that has no equal in human history begins, I will call my people home. The weight of responsibility settled on my shoulders like a heavy cloak. How do I make people understand the urgency? How do I convince them that they don't have years to decide, but only months? Tell them exactly what you have seen, Jesus replied. Tell them about the blood moon in August, about the awakening that will follow, about the deceiver who will arise. Tell them that when they see these things beginning to happen, they must lift up their heads because their redemption draws near, and most importantly, tell them that the choice they make in the coming months will determine where they spend eternity. He paused, his expression growing even more intense. But Rachel, there is something else you must understand. The rapture is not just about escaping tribulation. It is about being ready for the wedding feast of the Lamb.